been a while since we've looked at the chicken yard, and there's a lot of neat new things happening, like these particular new little friends. There's two moms, two very differently sized moms, co-parenting a whole bunch of differently sized and colored babies. They'd been broody for a while, and so we got them some baby chicks, and now they're all growing up together in a nice group. There's around 11 or 12 little ones and two moms sharing, and they just bop around the yard. And I'm mentioning them because they're really super sweet and cute, but also we've been trying to focus some energy towards maximizing good quality feed for these little ones in a complex chicken system with a compost operation and lots of hens. Let me share some ideas. We want to maximize the amount of greens that these little ones can eat, along with their moms, of course. And we've talked over the years about soaking seed and sprouting it. We've talked about duckweed. So here's a little pond. You can see what's going on in there. There's 2x4 welded wire rings that keep the little ones safe. They can grab onto it if they need to. That one just demonstrated that whole process. But they can free choice get in along these edges and pick duckweed out of the pond. That's a lovely source of green, but we also love providing them sprouts. Go on, little babies. Go find your mamas. And I'll link here if you're interested in watching a video where we talked in greater detail about our sprouting process, where we take whole viable seed that we get that's actually lower cost than buying commercial feed. Whole seed that we soak overnight and then introduce into the system. If the hens eat it all, it doesn't sprout, but if it has a chance to sprout, it turns really green. In this video, I want to show a couple very simple ways to get way more of the greens for your hens and way more total food out of a chicken composting system. See out here in the wetness, the crazy wetness of the spring, we're still trying to move things forward. I've been taking somewhat aged compost and crating it up to leave. And as we sift our compost, as we move through these food scraps, and there's sticks and there's bones and things like that, we make these compost rings on the margin of our composting system. And I've mentioned this before, but the idea of corn cobs and bones and debris that the chickens can't really easily scratch through, that mixed with some compost, doesn't have to be perfect, doesn't have to be a seed starting mix or anything like that, but just somewhat aged composty soil is a great place to throw soaked seed. So in this case there's wheat that's coming up, there might be a little bit of sunflower, but we just basically threw seed that had soaked one night. You don't even have to do that if it's good and moist out, but in these compost rings with lots of woody debris and material, the seeds have a chance to really sprout. They can browse this periodically, but they can't kick it all apart. Here's an additional layer to that idea where this is 2x4 welded wire, the same stuff we made the compost rings out of, and we took a 4-foot section and just folded over one side, folded over the other, and where it was cut, folded it over, and simply put that over a section of the compost that had been seeded to the soaked grain that we put out for the hens. You can see the greens are getting chewed on quite a bit, but they're not getting scratched apart. So this is a way to have a continual flow of greens through the system. What's really nice with this is you can fluff it up periodically or put bricks underneath it, especially if you've got little ones, you've got little chicks in the system. They can be underneath all this. So if I put some logs or bricks, they could fit through the welded wire up to about a month or 2 months old, and have the most choice to the fresh greens and exclude the other hens from kicking it apart. You could also take this and now simply move it over a little bit, smooth this out, and now this becomes green pasture, and everybody gets to have an immense amount of fun within that one spot. 2 ways within any chicken system to really add a ton of green is look for whole seed, whole viable seed. Wheat does very well, sunflowers work pretty darn well. You know, use what's available to you, and think about normal compost rings but seeded with soaked seed on the top, or just straight seed after or before a good rain. And things like this. This could also be pallets that go across here. It could be chicken wire with all sorts of other material. Very simple, and you can just see in a moment how effective that actually is. Let's go even simpler for a moment, and this isn't necessarily about getting sprouts for your chickens, but just having backup of tons of food. Now this isn't staged, this is just a board that's been sitting near the coop for a while, maybe a week, and that's what's happening underneath there. Now granted, we've got a lot of fertility, there's many hens in this system, so the soil is basically teeming with worms at this point, and having a board on the ground makes a really safe space for them to come up. Pill bugs will go under there as well. If we put more wood chips and then a board on top, it would be more pill bugs and millipedes. And if it's just in straight ground contact with really rich soil, it's worms. So pretty wonderful amount of free food just by laying a board on the ground. And you can see where some of these seeds landed. They're sprouting as well. So I will let this be a little bonus moment for that red lady and others and repeat this very high-tech system right there. If you wanted to be real metal about it, you could take an old skull that you found in the compost one time and move that after a while. And where there was a hole in the skull, the grasses are coming up, and there's red wigglers that were occupying the space that the teeth were. Is that macabre or exquisite? I don't know. But it is what it is. There's carbon, there's silica, there's raw ingredients all throughout the landscape and the world. We just rearrange them to positive effect and pleasure when we can. Nothing like putting a skull on the ground in order to get sprouts and worms. You can see where that little mom is very actively encouraging her kids to kick and explore. About 20 minutes ago, that was a pile of milk crates and bulb crates that have been sitting here for a week or two. I wanted to tidy up and organize, so I put them back. But it's a reminder that when you have piles of stuff, you have an old bucket upside down, you've got a tire laying there, you got a pile of cinder blocks in the chicken yard. When you move them, there is a bonus. And the before, you could imagine, was just a pile of plastic, and now it's cleaned up and a nice snack for the two moms and their little kiddos. Outside of our chicken yard, closer to our home, is where we have another compost pile where we manage waste materials from different manure streams and food scraps that aren't great for the hens. There's a 2-bay system here, an eastern and a western. We're currently adding to that bay, and we're letting this bay rest. And the day that I finished smoothing out the compost, this is all completely raw, decomposing materials that are isolated from the hens. I just basically threw the same wheat that's in their system. So soft winter wheat, it could be red winter wheat, whatever sort of seed you have around. And even though it's by no means finished compost, very clearly it's growing lots of greens. The soil, the compost down below is probably about 90 or 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It needs a ways before it gets finished, but I can just every few days grab a clump like this and take that clump and bring it in and put it on the ground and let the chickens completely rip this apart. If I'm open to that, they'll get lots and lots of greens, and then they can kick apart the root system and get the worms and the sugars in the roots as well. And this will go right into the composting flow. Now, of course, I could reseed right in there, and that's fine, but maybe I want to clear out a whole area and seed something else, or clear it and reset it so there's different ages of wheat. I can keep dragging this into the chicken yard or give them more total value by taking something like old pots. Maybe you've got 5-gallon buckets with holes or cracks in them. These happen to be nursery pots that aren't in use for other things right now. I just put some sawdust in the bottom of that one and then some sprouted seed in the bottom of this one, and I can simply plant the top with these greens, maybe leave it on the driveway or near the fence so they can pick through it, or simply put it in the chicken yard and let them pick at it but not get everything and dump it later. Maybe this one I'll just put a nice wad on top. We toyed with the idea of having a subscription service where once a week people could come and pick these up and bring their empties and have fresh sprouts for their hens. I wonder if there are people out there where that would be a neat little side project. We'd have people pay a deposit for the container, and then they get a thing loaded with wine cap stropharia and red wigglers and really verdant sprouts to feed their hens. I mean, heck, you could even snip this and make juice out of it if you wanted. So a compost pile that's months away from being ready for the garden can still be a source of generating immense amount of food value. Those same seeds just exploded in total food value and vitamin C and E. There's all sorts of extra proteins. The sugars get converted into more useful forms. There's lots of moisture. There's soil life. There's shading of the compost to help it finish. There's root exudates from the wheat that draw red wigglers to help nourish their situation. And it just looks a little bit nicer. So that's a way to take a compost pile that's nowhere near finished and have a continual wave of greens to feed your hens too. That's enough for me on this subject. I'd love to hear from you. In the comments, share how you add extra green snacks or high value, low cost, ethically generated treats for your hens. You have a really neat trick for red wiggler production or black soldier fly or maggots or something else that you want to share, write it in the comments. Let me know what I missed, and hopefully for some of you out there that have a random board or an old skull or piles of scrap fencing or old buckets and hens, this might have landed as a useful way to intersect some things.